Happy Saturday, everyone, and welcome back to another video on the channel. Well, I want to give you an update on what's happening with Bitcoin, and this week we're going to look at it from a more macro perspective. We're going to take a look at what's happening from a bigger zoomed out picture, because I do think it's important to always have an idea of what the higher time frames are looking like. So with that said, let's not waste any more time at all, and let's get into the video. So looking at Bitcoin here, what we can of course see is that its price has done ridiculously well over the last year, right? I mean, people can call it what they want. They can say that the bull market just started, but I mean, if we're being honest, the bull market started a year ago. The bull market started a year ago, and we've been saying that we've been in this thing. We're probably 30% through this thing already. But with that in mind, of course, I think there is a lot more room to go. There's just a lot of obstacles in the way. Now, as of recently, of course, Bitcoin's price has been pulling back, leading a lot of people to kind of be a little bit concerned. But what you can realistically see here is that from a zoomed out perspective, this 14-15% drop in Bitcoin's price isn't really much. It's just a drop in the bucket. And at the end of the day, even if we continued another 20-30% to the downside, we would still be looking extremely healthy, and that this would be looking extremely good for a move to the upside. But what I want to talk about is why we're getting this pullback, what this pullback could mean, and how I'm actually expecting this to go. I'm actually going to give you a real price prediction or a real movement prediction of what I think is going to happen. Something I don't do extremely often because I want you to be prepared, but I am going to show you my invalidation level. All of that will make sense in a second. Oh, and I did also want to let you know, if you do use the Margex link down in the description below, you can get a couple $100s in a deposit bonus. You don't need a VPN. You don't need a KYC, meaning you don't need to give them any of your information. You can just deposit funds on the platform and immediately start trading with leverage. It's super easy, super convenient. And like I said, you can get a couple $100 in deposit bonuses down below. So go check it out and let me know what you think. But let's get back into the video. Now, the main question that people are asking is, well, why in the world is Bitcoin pulling back right now? Now, I'm not talking about a fundamental perspective. I'm not talking about the ETF. I'm not talking about news. I'm not talking about GBTC. I'm not talking about any of those things. Today, we're just specifically talking about the fundamental technical analysis of what's happening with the charts. And from a technical analysis perspective, the reason why we're pulling back is quite simply just because this is a slowdown level. You guys know I call this 618 to 786 box, the Fibonacci retracement zone, the party pooper zone. This is the zone that historically will always slow Bitcoin's price down in a bull market. Always. There is not one bull market that there's been where this isn't the zone that slowed it down. Look at the last one. Look whenever we tried to enter into a bull market. Where do we run into resistance? 786 box. Where do we pull back to? Retest. 618 box. 618 box. 618 box. 786 box. And the moment we broke this zone, we finally stopped slowing down and we went into the macro rally. Let's actually go over to TradingView and look what happened back in 2013 to 2015. We started to work our way back up. We were doing decently well. We were kind of sideways though. We went sideways here. Then we went sideways here. We didn't see a ton of growth. Where at? The 618 to 786 box. Once we broke that level, then we started going vertical into the bull market. That's just what happens with Bitcoin, okay? It's just how it works, and I think that's how it will always work. So first of all, I mean, realistically, I could just end the video there and just say, no, this is normal. We're always going to slow down here. We're always going to pull back here. And once we do finally clear this level, and once we finally do use some support to break through it, then we can call this the real rally part of the bull market, okay? But there are other things that are happening. One thing to consider is that we have a ton of liquidity here, right? You have to think about how much liquidity was being built up over the course of a year right here. Whether it's this resistance and this resistance or this support, the resistance established here, the support here, the support here, the resistance here. This is the weekly time frames. So these are weekly liquidity levels that are being established. 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks of bouncing on these same exact levels, creating this liquidity, okay? And so when you approach a liquidity zone of this nature, of course, you're going to slow down there, of course. On top of that, what you have to see is that Bitcoin broke out of an extremely hard thing to break out of. We were in this ascending structure, and Bitcoin broke out of this structure. This is not normal. Generally, what happens for cryptos is that they will break to the downside. There's a 75% chance it breaks to the downside. Only 1 in 4 times will you ever see the price break to the upside. And then of that, only 1 in 3 times will it maintain to the upside. So the likelihood of a crypto breaking out to the top side of an ascending structure like this, holding it and continue upwards, is extremely low. And so because it did something of that nature, of course the bears are starting to be like, this thing's probably pulling back. Now they're causing this sell pressure. Now they're opening shorts, they're pulling the market down, they're adding liquidity to the bottom side, they're doing all of these things. And so of course, whenever you look at it from a structural perspective, it's extremely likely that we do get some type of pullback here. On top of that, you look at your RSI, extremely overextended to the top side. We were putting in these little micro higher highs, but putting in these lower highs on your RSI. That's bearish divergence, just to go to show that the momentum is slowing down while in a time in which the price was going up. That's a sign that that little fall could be on the way. Imagine throwing a rock straight up in the air. Eventually it'll go up, but it'll start doing that. And that, and that, and that. And that's what bearish divergence is a signal of, that that little turn is happening in which the price will eventually start to pull back. You look at your MACD, it's another great sign that momentum is slowing down, and we could possibly get some type of bearish MACD cross here. Now, we still do have quite a ways away until that does happen, so it might not happen just yet. But again, that's a sign that we are overextended, and we may need to kind of go bearish a bit to let this cool down. Last thing that I want to pull up is the fact that our Bollinger Bands are overextended to the top side. You guys know when we get to the top side of our Bollinger Bands, we will almost always go back to the 20 simple moving average. Look at history. That's just what happens, right? Until you're in the rally part of the market. And boom, back to the 20, back to the 20, back to the 20, back to the 20. That's just normally what happens, right? So when you get extended to the top side of something like the Bollinger Bands, you can somewhat expect that a pullback's going to happen soon. And so what I think you can kind of go ahead and see is that from a technical perspective, this is normal. It's not anything to be freaked out about or worried about or think that this is the end of the bull market. It just goes to show that we're actually still within the same cyclicality that we've been in historically, which is a good thing to me because it somewhat guarantees that we'll rally as long as nothing fundamentally gets destroyed, right? So from a fundamental based perspective, this is normal. From a technical based perspective, this is normal. And I think that it's totally okay that this pullback does happen. Now, I told you all I would give you a price prediction. Let me tell you what that is. I actually do think that Bitcoin's likely going to go a little bit further back. But what I will say is that if at any given point Bitcoin closes above $45.2 thousand on a weekly close and holds the level, I'm not talking about a wick like this, I'm talking about it breaks up and holds it, okay, then I'm invalidated, and I think it could possibly then start to look for a $50,000, a move up to $50,000, okay? That's my invalidation level. But until that happens, I am under the belief that Bitcoin's going to pull back to retest some of this resistance, okay? You guys saw this is a key level of resistance. This was a level of resistance, although we didn't really take much to get through it. These two levels are strong liquidity. And when you mix in the fact that our 20 simple moving average is heading directly to those to those levels, I think that there's going to be an interaction. Key levels like this are like magnets, okay? They're like magnets. And whenever you create an intersection like this, whenever you have a moment in which they're all going to be in one place, it's like a magnet that pulls the price down because those bears are starting to enact on their plans and causing that selling pressure and losing that buying momentum, right? And so in my opinion, I think that yes, as we start to see this volume start to kick in, as we do start to see this bearish liquidity kick in, forcing the price down, consolidating in, that it's likely that we will at least backtest that 20 SMA, which is currently sitting right around $35,000, but I do think it will climb a bit before we get there. And so because of that, in the short term, I am quote unquote bearish. I do think that the price is going to pull back a little bit more, and that pullback could look like another move of, roughly 5 to 8% to the downside. But like I said, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think that's really that big of a deal. And then what happens from there, you never really know, right? If we backtest and we hold some support, who knows? Maybe we look for that continuation in that move. I think it's more likely that we would actually continue a little bit further down to what could be about 34 to 35K. I don't know if we lose that level, but this does happen a lot. like I said, it's a 1 in 3 chance when you break an ascending structure that you actually hold above it. 2 out of 3 times, you're going to lose that previous point of resistance. You're not going to flip this into support. You're going to re-enter, and then you're going to pull back through it and then break out to the downside. That's just normally what happens. And this, right? This wouldn't shock me. Whatever, and that's a move to $31,000, okay? But I'm not going to go that far. I'm not going to look that far ahead yet. The first thing I am going to just look for is how do we interact with this key level of support around, of course, right now about $39,000 to $38,000 to the downside. So in the grand scheme of things, this is normal. This is something that you see all the time with Bitcoin. It's not anything to worry about. This is an expected pullback, and I think this pullback could continue a little bit further over the days and maybe weeks to come. But as it does play out, as structure does build, as we look for support, as we look for resistance, I will continue to update you. But I wanted to give you, again, a more macro, zoomed out perspective of what's happening and hopefully calm you down a little bit so you're not all that worried about this. Now, I will let you know any of the trades, any of the buys, any of the sells, the leverage that I'm doing is over on Margex again. Like I mentioned before, you don't have to KYC. You don't need a VPN. You can just deposit funds and start trading and get a deposit bonus of a couple $100. It is the best trading platform in the world of crypto, in my opinion, and it's worth using at least if you use the link down in the description below. So with that in mind, of course, I hope you guys did enjoy today's video, and I will see you all next time. Peace out, everybody.